so much, Kay. So welcome, everyone. It was lovely to speak to you a bit just now and get a sense of how you are, where you are, and your experience with Dana Kosha. So I'll say a little bit about me. I'm Suryadarshini, and I'm coming into this Zoom call from Norwich in the east of England, where I've lived for 12 years, but I'm from Canada originally. So that's why my accent sounds, well, probably sounds very Canadian to you, but to my Canadian family, I sound very English. So I started practicing yoga in Canada, but then when I came to Norwich, I asked where I could practice yoga, and someone suggested the Norwich Buddhist Center. So I started going along to the center there and trained for ordination, and I was ordained 4 years ago at Akashabana. And what has really been important to me the last 4 years, I mean, this was part of my practice moving towards ordination, but it's really continued on, is the bringing together my yoga practice and my Dharma practice. And really they're not, I don't really see them as separate, but often we categorize them differently. You know, we think about yoga as something that we do when we go to a class and we roll out a mat and do these poses with Sanskrit names, and meditation practice or Dharma practice or Buddhism, something that we do on a cushion or in a study session. And when I trained with Bodhi Yoga, which is a teaching that was created by Sadhata and Sudhaka, 2 order members, they trained us to bring together these teachings. So I think of it as Hatha Yoga in a Dharma context. So what I'm going to bring to you today, it's not a yoga session. Again, I'm not going to ask you to roll out a mat and come into any particular poses, but there will be an invitation, if you'd like to, for some movement at one point in the practice. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. There's another, we're going to be using a little bit of mudra and hand gestures. So there'll be the option to stay seated and do that if you prefer. One of the things that comes into a lot of my teaching, whether it's meditation or whether it's more movement-based practice, is this idea of a spectrum, and of on one side of a spectrum there being quite strong, if we're talking yoga, maybe quite strong postures, maybe quite active effort, a lot of strength and heat building. Sometimes it's called yang practice. And then on the other side, there's more receptive, more invitational, more allowing. You can think of this as a yin style practice. But I think we can bring this idea of a spectrum of this movement, this shift into anything. So the Buddha taught us about right effort, and about how, if some of you may know the story of Sona, the monk who practiced walking meditation for so long that the bottom of his feet was cut up, and the Buddha gave him the instruction of practicing balanced effort and making sure, he compared his effort to tuning a lute, playing a lute, and if you tighten your lute strings too tightly, they'll snap, and if you leave them too loose, then they won't play. So this idea of right effort can come into anything we do, whether it's a physical practice, physical movement, whether it's the effort that we make on the meditation cushion. I know sometimes I can find when I'm meditating and trying too hard, I can physically find myself leaning forward on my cushion. I don't know if anyone relates to this, or feeling this sort of like gathering and this furrowing in my brow, as if by forcing that effort, I can become more concentrated. But of course, we know that actually it has the opposite effect. If we push too hard or force too much, we become tight and rigid, just like those lute strings that snap. And equally, if we are too soft and floppy, then we get distracted and we're not able to maintain a present awareness. So we've got this idea of a spectrum which we move through, and we may notice our tendencies. We may notice if we have a tendency towards a bit of a pushing or a forcefulness, or if we have a tendency towards that sort of floppiness or that laziness. And there's positive and I don't like to say negative, but we can find that it's helpful at times to work against our tendencies, but we need to be careful of how we do that. We need to always do that from a place of metta, place of kindness. So there's no sense of, if we're a bit tired, trying to force a bit more effort, because we could just overexhaust ourselves. And equally, if we're feeling really, really energetic and full, if we try to pull that back, that can create a bit of a tension, you know, like there's this energy that wants to flow. So what I'd like to explore in this session, drawing on these different teachings of right effort, but also on the Buddhist figure Tara, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, how she holds both sides of this spectrum, how she embodies the qualities both of all-accomplishing wisdom, of fearlessness, but also of boundless compassion and resting back, sort of receptivity. I might ask, actually, has anyone heard of the Bodhisattva Tara? So she's sometimes named the Savioress, or her name translates as star. So give me a little wave if you've heard this name before or heard of this person before. Okay, so most of us have, but not all of us. There are countless Buddhist figures who have different qualities associated with them. And really they're embodiments of enlightened qualities. But there can be a tendency, I think, for us to like externalize these qualities. You know, we think of these personas or these figures as outside of ourselves, or as something that's over there. And in one sense, that can be really helpful. We maybe have a sense of being here and wanting to open up to something over there, or moving towards something. But I think it's also important that we recognize that these qualities are within ourselves as well. And we can move towards them. We can open up to them within ourselves. So I'll tell a little bit of a mythical story of Tara in a moment. But first, I'd like us just to settle. So I've given you a lot of words there, a lot of input. And we're going to take a little pause into silence so that we can just arrive and settle a bit. But wherever you are, if you've been writing or making notes, just putting that to the side. Maybe shifting a bit in your seat if you want to move side to side or front and back. Having a little bit of movement of the shoulders, movement of the neck. And finding a place to be still. You don't have to close your eyes right away, but you can if you'd like. And for the first few breaths, focusing on the exhale. Feeling how the exhale allows you to drop down a bit more into the surface underneath you. Feeling the sense of contact with a chair or cushion, the floor. And feeling inside the body. The sit bones at the base of our pelvis, rooting down. Our shoulder blades sliding down the back. Each exhale, allowing the shoulders to soften away from the ears a little bit more. Shoulder blades sliding down the back a little bit more. Maybe even feeling your elbows dangling, drawing down towards the floor. Not having to do any work to hold up your arms. And over the next couple of breaths, shifting your attention to your inhale. Allowing any subtle lifts that come from that sensation of drawing breath into the body. Feeling the crown of your head gently lengthen up towards the sky. Feeling a gentle opening across your chest, breastbone, heart area. Feeling this gentle interplay. Each inhale, a little bit of lift, opening. And each exhale, a bit of grounding and release. Now bringing your attention to your hands. What position are your hands in relation to your body, in relation to each other? Just noticing. if they're not there already, turning your palms down. So whatever your hands are in contact with, if you're sitting on the floor, they may be on your thighs or your knees. If you're sitting on a chair, they may be on your thighs or on the arms of the chair. What's it like to feel that contact and support from your fingertips, soft curve of your palm, what about your shoulders? Be slightly turned in, an inward rotation. Noticing if this evokes any qualities of drawing inward or groundedness. And in the next few breaths, shifting now to turning your palms up. And finding how this feels different in your hands. Now the weight is at the back of your hands. Your palms are open to the air. And how does this feel for your shoulders? This gentle external rotation is opening out. Strong back, soft front is about the relationship between equanimity and compassion. Strong back is equanimity and your capacity to really uphold yourself. Soft front is opening to things as they are. The only way one can actualize compassion is through fearlessness. Because to really let yourself feel suffering and then allow the heart to transform the suffering takes a lot of courage. Blinking your eyes open. bringing in a bit of movement. So this quote is by Roshi Joan Halifax, who's a Zen teacher. He does a lot of work with the dying and is an experienced teacher and meditator. And I find it really brings in that idea of that spectrum of qualities that we need in practice. That sense of a strong back and that groundedness, that confidence, that fearlessness, and then also the soft fronts, compassion, the receptivity. I'll tell you a bit about Tara now. So some of you already know Tara as a female bodhisattva. Bodhi means enlightened or enlightenment, from the same root of the word as Buddha, the awakened one. And sattva is being. So we've got these enlightened beings. And Tara is quite singular in her, the way that she's personified. Particularly, well, for me, it really stands out, is the way that her feet are arranged. So often when we see pictures or statues of Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, we see them with their legs crossed, yeah, probably in full lotus pose. So this has this quality of internal practice, this meditative gathering in, yeah. So we could really think of this as that more internal, grounded, quiet place. But of course Tara, and I'm just realizing my camera's on mirror, so it's probably going to be the wrong foot, but Tara's foot is stepping down into the world. So she has in her body, she is showing us these two qualities: the need to be back within ourselves, to be confident, to be internal, but also to step down into the world, to have this quality of moving forward, of engaging with others. And I think this is really relevant in the current lockdown situation, especially as we transition out of it. You know, how do we navigate this internal space with moving back into the world? So Tara is said to be, there's many myths associated with her, and one of them is that she is born from the tears of Avalokiteshvara, another bodhisattva of compassion. And he cried his tears for the world, for the suffering that's experienced in the world, and it formed this lake of tears out of which Tara was born, this green, she's sometimes called a goddess. For some, this imagery, these colors, this myth is really, really evocative, and it can help us relate to these qualities of opening out to something outside of ourselves. And for some of us, it doesn't do that. It just sort of feels a bit unknown, or a bit unfamiliar, or doesn't resonate. So again, I really invite you to find for yourself, what do you need in this practice, or in your own practice? Is there that mythical element that needs to be fed? And so as we go through this next section around mudra, it may really work for you to bring to mind Tara, this green figure of ultimate compassion and fearlessness. Or it may, for you, suit to stay much more in the felt sensations of your body as we take these different movements. So let's just see what happens. So rather than focusing on Tara's feet, actually, I'm going to focus on her hands. So I'd like you, so it'll be Tara's left hand. So if you lift up your left hand here and just bring it around about to your shoulder, and then bring it forward in front of you. And you can do this a few times. So maybe inhaling as you come back, and exhaling as you come forward. And you can make this really small and subtle. Maybe it's just moving forward and back, or maybe you want to get a little bit more active. a sort of rotation of the shoulder, and then I'm almost a pressing. And first, let's let the hand be really soft. So have like a cupped palm almost, quite soft fingers. And we have more of a feeling of a gentle, almost like we're trying to allow a bit of space. We're forming a bit of space around ourselves, around our heart. Sometimes I have a sense of this mudra if I'm feeling like things are just getting a little bit overwhelming and I need some space for myself. I can picture this gentle cut hand, maybe finding a place for it to rest. So it might be right out in front, it may be a little bit to the side. And then letting that go. We'll do that again, but this time a little bit more active. So this time when you press your hand forward, let your elbow come to straight and let your hand really flex. So we're pressing much more strongly out in front. And again, taking that movement a few times and feeling what it's like to have that a bit more active, strong movement out in front. How does that feel different? So this mudra that we're forming is the Abaya Mudra. Abaya means fearlessness. Maybe finding a place to hold. Maybe that's right out in front, maybe it's a bit to the side. You don't have to lock your elbow, you can have a little bit of a bend. And Tara is generally holding a slight variation of this mudra where she takes either her index finger or her ring finger and meets it with her thumb. So if you wanted to do that, you could. And I've heard this called the Vitarka Mudra, where she's communicating this quality of fearlessness through reliance on the three jewels. And those are symbolized by the three fingers we have reaching up. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So now there's an invitation, if you'd like, to come to standing and to take this into a full body movement. So I'm first going to say what you can do if you stay seated, which I'd suggest you can still bring in a bit of movement, but just in the top of your body. So I'd suggest that when we come back, you do a little bit of a rounding of the spine. So when your hand's coming back, you're rounding the spine, gathering in, and then as you press forward, there's a sense of lengthening and lift. So you can still have this movement of moving back and then moving forward. If you want to come to standing, you can bring in a whole body movement. So starting by turning to your right and taking your right foot forward. And just take a little bit of time to move into a little bit of a lunge position. We haven't done very much warm up at all, so we're just keeping this really gentle. And take a few little test bends into that knee. So we're not trying to keep the back leg super straight. The back leg can be nice and bent. And we want to make sure that the front knee doesn't come over the front foot or front ankle. So that knee is always in line with that ankle. And first, let's just do a few of these test bends. So as we've got a sense of lift, that lift that we were finding with the inhale, straight legs. And as we exhale, we're bending into that front leg. And you can do this a few times. Inhale up, exhale down, so that you can decide what sort of distance you'd like. So if you want to take your foot further back for more of a stretch, you can. If you want to keep it quite gentle, your feet can be quite close together. And then once you've found your stance, we can start to bring in our hands. So whichever leg is forward, that should be your right leg. It'll be your left hand that's coming forward. So we'll do just what we were doing sitting down, but now we're standing. So when we straighten the legs and inhale, we're reaching the arm up. And then as we exhale and bend, we're pressing the hand forward. So for some of us, we'll just want to do 1 or 2 bends and then find a place to hold. But if you're enjoying this, if you'd like to, you can do this multiple times. So we're inhaling and then exhaling. And if you'd like, that other hand can just be resting at your hip. And notice which movement you've chosen. Is this a really strong hold with that flexed palm, straight arm, or do you need a little bit of receptivity, a little bit of softness? And then finding a place to hold for just a few breaths. And then releasing your hands if you haven't already, and stepping your feet together. Maybe rolling the shoulders, shifting the hips. Pausing for a moment to notice the effect of that movement. And then when you're ready, coming to your second side, left side. So take your time to set yourself up again. You've got your foot forward. This is your left foot forward now. And how much space do you need? It might be a little different on this side. Take a few test bends. Make sure this front knee doesn't come over your front ankle, so we're not doing this. We're keeping our hips more or less facing forward, so we're not opening out to the side. And then once you've found your stance, you can bring your hands in. So whichever foot is forward, it's your left foot now. The opposite arm is going to come up. On the inhale and on the exhale, we press. So move with your own breath, your own pace. Maybe you want to hold in the bend for a couple of breaths each time, or maybe you're enjoying the inhale lift and exhale forward. You could bring the opposite hand to your hip. Or are you choosing that strong pressing of the hand, that real, maybe it feels a bit like a no or a stopping? Or are you choosing that softer, more receptive, allowing shape? And then finding a place to hold. Maybe bringing your finger to your thumb. Last breath or two. And then coming up and stepping the feet together. Resting, taking a little bit of movement if you need, and then feeling the effects of that on your body, on your legs, your arms, your shoulders. And then moving back towards seated. So this quote of strong back, soft front. really brings in the necessity of having both. We're in that posture we were just taking. We need the strength of our base, our legs. I'm feeling that even after just a few movements, the strength in my quadriceps and legs. But then we also have this really soft, well, we can choose to have quite a soft approach, even in a strong posture. You know, this really allowing and receptivity. So rather than saying there's certainly not a right way to approach, well, any yoga pose or any shape or any practice, but rather there's this spectrum, there's this mixture of effort, but also what is needed. So Tara is often said to be a savioress. She responds quickly to whatever is needed. So you can either think of that as something that you could call on. So you could think of calling on Tara for her to respond, maybe to give you the support, giving these qualities. But actually, as I've, in the last little while, I felt less like it's, that Tara is something outside that I'm calling on to provide. And more, it's like an open ask to my somatic experience. It's like, what is needed? You know, if I'm tired, do I need now to just rest back? You know, have that quality of a bit of softening, a little bit of allowing, a bit of that soft front. I'm really starting to listen into the body. Or is what is needed a bit of that strong back, a bit of that uplift, a bit of that pushing or insisting, being clear about what is needed. We're going to move into now a seated practice where we'll have the opportunity to, in a way, revisit what I've been talking about and what we've been doing in movement, but taking that into stillness, taking that into a quieter place. And just before we do that, I invite you, if you'd like, to place your hand on your heart. So this is the front of our heart. And I make that distinction because we can also think of the back of our heart. We can think of that space between our shoulder blades, just underneath our shoulder blades, right at the back. And as we make this connection at the front of our heart with our own hand, what if we imagined another hand, perhaps a friend, a partner's, or perhaps Tara's hand, gently pressing just underneath our shoulder blades, giving us that little bit of support. And we could imagine maybe resting back into that hand. Or we could maybe feel a little bit of gentle pressure from that hand, inviting us to open the heart, open the chest a little bit more. So again, feel into what would your body most respond to today? And letting that image or that sensation of support at your back start to fade. Come back to the front of your heart, come back to your chest. And again, if you'd like to, you could just let your front hand gently stroke down the front of your torso, from your heart down to your belly. You can do that a few times, stroking your soft front. We're the only mammals that walk around with our front torso completely exposed in this way. It's a really vulnerable part of ourselves. So you may find a place as your hand moves that it would like to rest, maybe on your heart, maybe on your belly. Just letting the breath come and go. Maybe on the torso or solar plexus. One more breath here. And then releasing your hand if it's not already. And then moving into about 10 minutes or so of seated meditation. I'll talk a little bit at the beginning. And then I'll finish by reading the quote by Roshi Joan Halifax one last time. We've done a few different hand gestures through this practice. We've looked at having our hands palms up in our lap or palms down. We've felt a mudra of fearlessness, either having a soft cupped palm or a strong flexed fingers. And we've felt the connection of our hand with our heart or our belly. As we move into stillness, finding a place for your shoulders, for your hands, that comes out of you. So is it that you need a bit of grounding, palms down? That you need a little bit of openness and expansion, palms up? Feeling the breath. That lift and opening as you inhale. And grounding and release as you exhale. Feeling with each breath that strong back, soft front. you get distracted, lose focus, sometimes a choice of movement of the hand can serve as an anchor, just like the breath. A gentle mudra, or even placing the hand on the body, at the heart or the belly. Strong back, soft front is about the relationship between equanimity and compassion. Strong back is equanimity and your capacity to really uphold yourself. Soft front is opening to things as they are. The only way one can actualize compassion is through fearlessness. Because to really let yourself feel suffering and then allow the heart to transform the suffering takes a lot of courage. Taking your time as you open back out into the room, blinking your eyes open, rolling your shoulders.